This is the Oneness Podcast, episode 43. I am Jessica Delmar. I assist in strengthening your knowledge of who you truly are as a powerful creator being during these powerfully shifting times. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. In this episode, we are going to continue talking about the 369 body, consciousness, and spirit information that we spoke about in the last episode, episode 42. But in this episode, I want to take it a little bit deeper because there's so many different layers to all of this, to everything. And this is a significant layer that I'm going to be sharing in today's episode that connects back to our consciousness and spirit in a way that brings it back to here, our now moment earth experience. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to be putting up some illustrations to help make it a little bit more easier to understand. If you're not watching on YouTube, I'll put a link to my blog where I'll post these illustrations along with this episode information. This is a pretty complex topic, and it really requires you to open up your mind and kind of see with that bigger picture, because everything is energy, and we are in our now moment pulling in such massive amounts of energy in order to help push us forward. So the first thing you need to know is that everything is here in the now moment. Everything is here, this now moment. The earth plane pulls the entire universe into thought and imagination or spirit to be physically created. You just have to align to the desired field of consciousness and field of spirit or imagination. So to recap, 369 are different frequency layers, if you will. The 3 frequency represents the connection to body and the now moment. The 6 frequency layer is your connection to consciousness, also your mind state. And the 9 frequency layer is your connection to spirit, and it also opens up into the imagination or the realm of imagination. The way that 369 was shown to me, even though they exist on different frequency layers, they all feed into each other. So it showed me the infinity symbol. If you have that infinity symbol, which is like the number 8, and you draw a line directly through the center of that number 8, basically you connect 3 points, 3, 6, and 9. When you connect those 3 points as a line going straight through that number 8 or the infinity symbol, that basically represents linear time. But if you move into the infinity symbol or route, that then connects to your experience of the now moment. The powerful portal of 369 is held in universal consciousness, hooked up to earth consciousness. It is a nebulous field that spans in relation to your direct consciousness. It is as expansive or not in alignment to your openness and willingness to imagine possibility. 369 is a spiral that unites all formless energy into form. It is centrifugal in nature, while also being centripetal in nature. Everything is here, and we want to shift your recognition of consciousness and form. The earth plane is energy, and this energy is consciousness. The form, the physical form, is a channel for consciousness, and consciousness is recognized in form. The consciousness that you align to is not a floating energy source, but is a library constructed from the recognition of spirit or source. The recognition of spirit or source comes through form. This recognition then feeds both your individual consciousness as well as the library of human collective consciousness. What is consciousness? Consciousness is a neural network of a greater mind that you are able to align to in your now moment. The greater mind exists in many layers, both within the earth experience as well as outside of the earth experience. The ability to tap into a specific level or field of consciousness depends on the form's frequency or the person's frequency. A person's frequency connects to the openness of their consciousness field, and a person's consciousness field connects to the openness of their spirit or their imagination. Children with pure hearts hold imagination beyond limitation. Their frequency is pure and strong, but as life hands them limitation in many different forms, it begins to lower their frequency, and their field of consciousness shrinks. However, it's much different now, as children entering the earth experience have much higher frequency, and they're able to maintain their high frequency throughout the density that we're going through right now, as well as the years ahead. Consciousness enables your physicality to understand itself. Consciousness offers information for the now moment, but you must remember that leading edge creation sometimes means that you must trust in things that you do not know. In other words, the unknown. This is when your consciousness field provides a portal into the unknown. The unknown is the open field of possibility, probability, and imagination, which allows you a space to play and trust in miracles and magic. It is unknown only because your direct consciousness has yet to understand it in physical or recognizable form. Your now moment pulls consciousness from the greater mind into the body and then into recognizable form. But you must understand that consciousness is simply the doorway to expanded forms of imagination that exist beyond the mind. Consciousness is the stargate, if you will, to the unimaginable parts of imagination. Right now, individual consciousnesses are tapping into gateways beyond this world, but the collective human consciousness is not quite there yet. This is because collective human consciousness must be maintained within an earth consciousness field, otherwise there would not exist the human experience in the gravitational field. The human experience is an earth experience, and so frequency in human consciousness must be maintained to align to the frequency of the planet upon which that human consciousness and collective exist within. In other words, human collective consciousness must exist within a frequency similar to earth consciousness. We are in a time when earth consciousness is rising. Therefore, human collective consciousness must also rise in alignment to the earth consciousness in order to continue this experience together. Years ago, when earth consciousness took a dive into lower vibration, which really started with the fall of Atlantis and Lemuria, when the earth consciousness took a dive into lower vibration, so did the collective human consciousness. We exist together as one body, humans and all living things upon earth. However, expansion of individual consciousnesses are vital to collective human consciousness evolution. As individuals awaken, their consciousness exits, if you will, the default collective human consciousness, or what you might know of as the matrix. And when individual consciousnesses open and awaken beyond the matrix, it opens pathways to explore both imaginable and unimaginable states of universal frequency and knowledge. As individual consciousness explores the untethered leading edge, it is simultaneously pulling this information back into the earth realm experience through the mind, which then always feeds back into the default collective human consciousness field because we exist together as one and we're still part of the greater collective consciousness. And it also, at the same time, feeds into the greater field of source knowledge. When the information you bring forward through your individual consciousness exploring the untethered leading edge beyond the human collective matrix, when you pull that information back into your form through your mind and you feed it back into the collective consciousness because we're all connected, it actually helps to assist with the expansion and continued evolution of both human as a collective and as you as an individual and the earth consciousness in this great collective experience. There is a co-creation between Earth consciousness and individuals who venture beyond the collective human consciousness or matrix. When Earth is in a place to ascend or descend, she manifests the living beings upon her to help aid in either expanding or contracting the collective human consciousness in alignment to the Earth's vibration. This time around, she asked for higher frequency soul and star beings to help incarnate and manifest higher frequency states of consciousness in order to feed that into the collective human experience and consciousness field. Otherwise, the collective human consciousness would not be able to keep up with the higher frequency states that Gaia or the Earth was moving into. The 369 portal is a connected energy source that leads to expansion through recognition and alignment. It is a living, breathing complex of energy that expands and contracts. Right now, in the unfolding of our universe, this connected energy source is expanding and is embodied within all forms, both micro and macro. In the individual form, your now moment, you are utilizing the 369 energy in the way that we've spoken about. The 3 frequency being the center of your form, which focuses on your now moment, or your form, your body. The 6 frequency, which represents the center of your consciousness field, which focuses on the mind. And the 9 frequency, which represents the center of spirit, also connected to imagination. And again, that is focused on the realm of spirit. So 369, 3 body, 6 mind, 9 spirit. Keep in mind that the 9 frequency, which is your connection to spirit and imagination, is dependent upon how open you are in your connection to spirit and imagination. Imagination is possibility and probability in creation. It is leading edge frequency which requires imagination, yet it's not grasped by consciousness on some levels. Meaning you have to constantly be expanding into new realms, even realms of the unknown, in your connection to spirit and imagination to continue to expand your consciousness and connection to spirit and imagination. To understand this more easily, we can compare it to dreams. Form. The sleeping form is the human body, which is the 3 frequency, the channel or the conduit for energy to move through. Your field of consciousness is the 6 frequency and can be compared to the different brainwave sleep states, such as alpha, theta, and delta. The level of brainwave sleep state that you are in, as a human body sleeping, determines the energy that you hook up with in sleep. In the deepest states of sleep, you can often access dreams. And dreams are what we compare to the field of spirit or imagination, which is the 9 frequency. Our greater collective human form, so if you think of the collective as one big form moving together, is ascending, which means our form, consciousness, and imagination or spirit is also expanding. I want to share with you where we are in this overall expansion as a collective human experience, because we are expanding in this way as a collective, as one whole unit together. But at the same time, you may also notice that you are linking up with this same flow of energy in your individual now moment experience. So coming back to the idea that everything is here, everything is now. Your now moment is so important that you can connect with and hook up with this greater flow of energy that is constantly, at this moment, expanding. So what it showed me was, again, going back to the 369 being that infinity symbol or that number 8 symbol. Understand that, again, we're working with the now moment. We are no longer working with linear time. The now moment opens up your multi-dimensionality, your connection to all things in your now moment, which allows you to easily alchemize energy and shift energy between past, present, and future, because there is no past, present, and future. There's only now. So what it showed me, again with the infinity symbol, the 369 are 3 different points, but they are all connected together and feeding each other. The energy is feeding into each other. So the 3 frequency is the center of the form, the physical form, the now moment. It focuses on the body, and this is both relative to the collective body, but also within your individual experience. The 6 frequency is the center of consciousness, which connects to both your mind and the collective mind. And what it showed me was that the 6 extends into ancient Egypt, or it extends into a consciousness field similar to ancient Egypt. And this is all about frequency. So it's a frequency state. It is a consciousness frequency state similar to when ancient Egypt existed. So it's not necessarily exactly physically like ancient Egypt, but it's simply frequency state of consciousness as ancient Egypt, which extends beyond our consciousness field even within the past 100 years. Through consciousness, you must understand, through this frequency state similar to ancient Egypt, it actually opens a portal, if you will, to access different fields of imagination. So as you expand your consciousness, and we are as a collective and individuals expanding our consciousness way beyond even just these past 100 years, all the way to ancient Egypt frequency consciousness, our ability to expand our consciousness opens up our ability to dive into even greater fields of imagination, which leads me into the 9 frequency. So the 9 frequency extends into our ability to access imagination points that extend all the way back to Lemuria, Atlantis, and Mesopotamia. This is our connection to spirit and imagination channeled through spirit. And what this is telling me is our imagination is now able to tap into what was once unknown, which is Lemuria, Atlantis, and Mesopotamia, and now allowing for that information to be utilized as imagination, to be recognized in form in this now moment. And we're able to do that because we're expanding our consciousness field into that higher frequency fields, much similar to ancient Egypt. And there's also, in Lemuria, Atlantis, and Mesopotamia, there's both high vibration and low vibration that existed. But where we are right now in our expansion, we are tapping into energy and vibration that helps to propel the expansion. So it would be high vibrational imagination from those ancient civilizations. Everything that we want or need has existed before and is stored in our imagination. Everything already exists. You create, but you create based upon imagination and thought, which you already hold all of. Your now moment simply aligns you to how open your consciousness field is, which aligns you to how open your field of imagination is, which aligns you to how you create in your reality, especially when you're creating on the leading edge. And if you're working on the leading edge as a spiritually evolved being and you're pulling in greater amounts of imagination and consciousness into your now moment mind and feeding it back into the collective experience and collective consciousness, you're helping to enable the greater collective to be able to tap into greater imagination. And it enables people to explore this greater imagination within themselves. It opens pathways for the human collective to pull in magnificent, unimaginable ideas to assist with transformative evolution in unimaginable ways. So again, if you were to look at this infinity field of 369, again, 369 are 3 different points within that infinity symbol. But if you were to draw a line through the infinity symbol and you connect the 3, 6, and 9 points, that is linear time. In linear time, you see it as, one being older than the next or being in this sort of linear timeline. But when you follow the scale of the infinity symbol and how 369 is feeding energy into each other, that's the energy you're pulling into the now moment. Not through linear time, but through the now moment and your multi-dimensionality. So how does this all make sense? The thing you must know is that everything is here. the now moment again. The past may have existed physically in the past, but our now moment is what matters in our center of form, the 3 vibration, when connecting 369 as an infinite realm of energy. You see, as we expand into imagination through the doorway of consciousness, everything is always pulled back into the form's now moment to be realized. So it creates this loop of 369, 369, 369. The consciousness of the human collective is expanding into greater territories of frequencies that existed upon Earth in the lifespan of Earth, specifically those frequencies that existed during the time of ancient Egypt. In other words, the consciousness field of the human collective is expanding to engulf the neural network frequencies that also existed at the time of ancient Egypt. And this is why ancient Egypt was able to leave humanity many breadcrumbs, if you will, as well as frequency towers is what I like to call them. In other words, pyramids and other large structures that they built for their unique purpose to utilize during that time, as well as future purposes, because they were able to connect to that flow of the now moment, Infinity 369, to bring in information of our now moment right here, right now. As you can see, they were able to tap into the 9 as well as the 3 in their now moment, being the 6. The ancient Egyptians embodied their multi-dimensional nature, and through their knowledge knew that consciousness would contract and divide, and then expand and unite again like an inhale and exhale of breath in the greater earth experience. They knew that we would be exactly where we are right now as a human collective, and that we would be in a much lower frequency consciousness than they were, but also that we would be expanding into a higher frequency consciousness in alignment to where the ancient Egyptians were. So they created a roadmap and blueprint to assist in this greater unfolding and awakening. With this expanding consciousness comes a wider pool of imagination, which still exists within the earth plane, but far beyond the human mind in today's awareness field or linear awareness field. Lemuria, Atlantis, and Mesopotamia are so far beyond grasp in the average human consciousness today that it exists as pure, unknown imagination for many people. However, as more and more people step into this expanded form of consciousness, their imagination will take them into these new, unknown territories of pure possibility. There were many abilities, healing techniques, technological and scientific advances, and applied spirituality in everyday life that melded together and united civilizations during the time of Lemuria, Atlantis, and Mesopotamia. All of these things are exploratory fields in your imagination, but this is really where your past lives come into play. This is because your unconscious already knows all the information from past lives, but your exploration into your expanding imagination is what will help bring the unconscious into light and start to connect dots for you through your recognition and understanding. The frequencies of consciousness, similar to the time of ancient Egypt that we are currently expanding into, offers a portal for our imagination to climb into very new and unimaginable places to remember imagination or dreams that go beyond what we can imagine right now, but exists because it has existed before and because we're still connected to it. The collective human consciousness is kind of like a bubble. Many people in the collective will not necessarily open their consciousness with the expanding bubble, but many will stay where they're comfortable. For those who want to expand and open, they now have the opportunity to do so because the ceiling or the bubble is expanding and rising. It allows people to venture into these new areas of consciousness and imagination if they choose. Many answers to how we create New Earth 5D are held in this new expanded bubble space, or rather this higher frequency imaginary space of Lemuria, Atlantis, and Mesopotamia. And we pull in that energy, that imaginary energy, into our now moment through our expanded consciousness field or frequency. We, as a human collective, are now able to reach for, or rather remember, those dreams because we are now in a place to attain them. And that's what came through for today's episode, but it's so important in terms of understanding this 369 infinity field and what we can tap into through our expanding consciousness, and how that expanding consciousness opens up the door for us to reach for deeper fields of imagination, because we are essentially then pulling it back into our now moment to create and build and manifest new things, new experiences, new opportunities. We're creating our new earth experience, not based upon what we know from the past 100, 200, 300 years, but we're creating our new earth experience based upon what we know of from our ancient selves. And just remember that we're hooking up to a flow in our greater universal planetary experience where we are tuned like a radio station to the 369 in this way. We're exactly where we are right now in our evolution. We are hooked up to ancient Egypt and ancient Lemuria, Mesopotamia, and Atlantis. Just like in those moments of ancient Lemuria, Mesopotamia, and Atlantis, they in their now moments also hooked up to the same flow that we're in right now. So it's a powerful time to pull that all together so that we can push the energy forward, utilizing all of the technology, information, knowledge, resources, energy, vibration, all of that is all connected. So in that way, it's also important to keep your steady alignment to this greater flow, because I also have an illustration of our grasp on linear time and how limiting it is. As you can see, the infinity sort of energy still regulates the linear time flow, but it's so much more limited. It's like you get a grain of rice in your entire earth experience. It's very limiting. So when you expand beyond that, you bring in so much possibility, but also understand that everything playing out right now in our collective experience is playing out with the past, present, future, linear timeline sort of mentality and structure. So if you're able to reach beyond that in your consciousness field, then you lift above that sort of limited structure that's playing out. Thank you everyone for listening in and for being here. If you have any questions, post them in the comments or email me. I'll post my email address in the description to this episode. You can also send me a voice message. I'll post a link to the voice message app in the description as well. And if you want to keep up with me more on the regular, follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you so much for being here, for listening in, and for all of your support. This podcast can now be found on all podcast platforms. Listen and subscribe on Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Breaker, and YouTube. I'll see you on the next episode, and remember that all is truly well. Oneness, love, and peace be with you.